Today in Matt's class, we are going to talk about some cool things you can do with creativity and writing your screenplay. All right, welcome back. Hanging out with me behind the camera is James, as per usual, and of course Cam is hanging out with me today as well, and we are talking about how to write a screenplay. So I've got some tidbits for you, some things that you guys can do for creativity. We've all got great ideas for stories, but there's certain things you can do to really kind of beef them up and make them even better, make them more interesting. The trick is this. A lot of times, some of the things that you can use are almost a cliche because you see this happening in a lot of movies and a lot of your favorite shows, but that's because they're good techniques for storytelling, and you start to see them over and over, and it almost seems like it's a cliche or it's a trope, but good storytelling is good storytelling. I've heard a lot of filmmakers say that they'll break it down where there's only 7 different stories that you can possibly tell. I've heard other filmmakers like Ron Howard say there's actually only one story. And if you subscribe to the whole Joseph Campbell kind of theory, the hero's journey, there really is only one story. You can kind of change the names, but it's always the same. It's always a person, that has these obstacles trying to win the prize or trying to achieve this goal, whether it's romance or whether it's business success or whether it's saving the galaxy, whatever it is, it's just kind of the same story. You kind of start seeing these patterns, but good storytelling is good storytelling. The challenge is to try to come up with something unique and to try to put a new spin on it if possible. So a lot of times opposites are attractive because they just make things more interesting. So for example, if you have a great story in your mind about a person that goes into business and let's say at the end of the story, they become very successful. Well, this story isn't going to be very interesting if you have a story about someone who's born into wealth and it's very easy for them to go to school, to go to college. Everything is basically handed to them, and so when they go into business for themselves, wow, that was just really, kind of easy. That's great. Feel good movie of the summer, right? Everything's perfect. It's actually not because everything is just kind of happy all the way through it. There weren't any things that were really achieved. It wasn't really a journey. And the bigger your journey is, the better your story is. So what would make for a better story? What if you had someone that had some kind of disadvantage? Now, this could be a physical disadvantage. This could be a social disadvantage. Maybe they weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Wouldn't that be a much better story at the end when they make this business and they become successful? If there's just a bigger journey and if they had way more obstacles, that would be a much, much better story where you have all these triumphant things that they have to go through, and each step of the way it's like a win, or maybe there's some things where there's also a bunch of losses. Much, much more interesting story. Now, I want to talk about the controversial 3. Yes, we need to talk about sex, violence, and profanity. So first, let's talk about sex, just because. Okay, so James and Cam, I want you guys to give me a list. Right now, I want to write down a list of the top 5 sexiest women on the planet. Go.
Daisy Ridley.
All right, number 1, we've got Daisy Ridley.
Gal Gadot. Yeah, Gal Gadot.
Okay.
Aubrey Plaza.
Who's that? She's in
Parks and Rec.
Oh, Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, there we go. Yeah, I get this.
What's her last name? Plaza?
Yeah.
Oh, Brie Larson, you said? What about Beyonce? Who are we gonna throw in here?
How about you, Matt? Who?
Oh, I know. All right.
Okay.
So we can agree this is a pretty good list of sexiest women on the planet, right? We didn't write down any porn stars.
We're classier than that.
I'm glad you said that, James. We did not put down any porn stars or anything kind of scandalous like that. Here's the thing. less is more. This is a very good list of sexiest women on the planet, as James puts it. These women are a lot classier, but I would say the reason why they still make the sexiest list is because they leave more to the imagination, and that's always going to be way sexier than anything you could actually put on screen. Oh, Aubrey. And is it Brie Larson, or is Brie Larson someone else?
Captain Marvel.
Oh no, I'm thinking of who's the Brie who plays the brunette on Community.
Oh, Allison Brie.
All right, hold on, I need to change this then.
Allison Brie goes on there. In no particular order, also.
Yeah.
I also realized that these are primarily brunettes. You deserved better, and I gave you justice.
So, here's an example of where this would be helpful. Let's say you are having a love scene, and let's say it's important to have this scene because maybe 9 months later in your story, a little baby shows up, right? And you need to show how and why this happens. So you could just show it, and the bed shaking and the sheets all over the place, or you could kind of imply it, and you could have maybe a scene where there's maybe soft light, right? Candlelight, and maybe the windows are open and there's sheer curtains kind of flowing in like so, and maybe you've got a woman who she's wearing a robe that maybe comes down, we just see her bare shoulder, and maybe this Fabio looking guy, or maybe someone who's got dreamy hair like Cam, or James who's got the dreamy hair too, maybe he comes up in and he kind of just, now don't imagine my face because it'll kind of ruin the whole thing, but this guy comes in, standing behind her, and maybe he kind of grabs her shoulder and kind of nuzzles in next to her ear, right? You have an evocative scene, not a provocative scene, but an evocative scene that's beautiful. It's artsy, it says a lot without showing a lot. Less is more, and it's love. It's wonderful, right? So I'm not saying you can't put sex in your script if it calls for it, and if something really raunchy is part of the story and that's kind of how it's supposed to be, then great, that's how it's supposed to be. But otherwise, you could probably ruin a really good story just by throwing something like that in there if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't belong. Next up, let's talk about profanity. So there's nothing wrong with having profanity in your script, but again, keep in mind, less is more, and let's say you've got a character, this character drops F-bombs everywhere. So no matter what happens, F this, F you, F that, F-ity, F, the whole way through the script. Then let's say this character, this is probably a silly example, let's say this character is walking down the street, they slip on a banana peel, and when they hit the ground, they say F really loud, and you want that to be funny. It's not really that funny because they've been effing their whole way through this entire script. It's just not that funny. Now, just off the top of my head, a funny example where using the F-bomb would actually be really hilarious. Imagine if you had a movie about church camp. All right, so imagine there's these kids, and let's say they're always getting in trouble, and there's these like mean nuns, and they've got the rulers, and every time they do something wrong, they whack these kids over the knuckles, for doing something. And let's say at one point this kid slips, and maybe he says the word bitch, and he gets in trouble, and then this other kid slips and accidentally bastard, whoops, kind of thing, and then the knuckles, again, or whatever. So imagine, what if at the end of the week, it's on a Sunday, it's during the actual mass, and let's say out of nowhere, for no reason at all, let's say there's this nun, this mean character who's always hitting, kids with the ruler. What if out of nowhere, for some reason, she slips, and out loud when everyone's praying, when it's really quiet, what if she slips and she says, F! All right, no one's laughing. I think that would be hilarious because that would be, oh my gosh, that is not the place for it to happen. And the fact that it was this mean old lady who's always, getting these kids in trouble, but she's the one who slips, I think that would be funny. But you want to use it sporadically. If you're going to have profanity, there's nothing wrong with that, but make it count. Make it have meaning to it so that when you hear it, it has some kind of impact. Last but not least, let's talk about gore and violence. For something like gore, again, there's nothing wrong with having it. You can have a slasher film, you can have an action film, and all kinds of crazy, bloody stuff happening and everything. But again, you want to have it mean something, you want to have it count. So What always annoys me if I go to see a horror movie, when in the first 5 minutes there's like this, this slasher that comes out and he's killing all these teenagers and they're all screaming, and it's just, a head goes rolling here and cuts off someone's hand there and blood all over the place and just all the screaming and stuff. I find myself like, oh my gosh, just kill all those kids already, because it's like annoying, right? So not very effective when it's just blood all over the place and all the incessant screaming. It's just too much. But I want you to imagine this. I want you to imagine Scott and Melanie are in a car and they're driving, and Melanie turns to Scott and says, "So Scott, what exactly is happening again? Give me the rundown." And Scott says, "Well, we're going to Daryl's place for the weekend. It's actually his uncle's place. And we're going to hang out with Daryl and Megan. And we're just going to have a weekend of fun and drinks and campfire. And it's up north. It's going to be a great time." And that's when Melanie says, "Oh, yeah, it sounds like fun. It's great. How far away are we?" And Scott says, "Oh, it's probably another 45 minutes. So Melanie says, "Oh, good. So then we've got time to have that talk." And that's when Scott says, "Oh, my gosh. Do we have to have that now? Listen, let's just have a fun weekend. I really don't want to get into it now." And she says, "Oh no, we're going to get into it. 7 years and no rock. Yeah, it's time. I need to be thinking about my future and everything else." And he goes, "Oh, well, I know who you're thinking about at work." And she says, "Oh yeah? Oh yeah." And they're like kind of bickering back and forth, right? Then we cut to a shot of Daryl and Megan, and they're standing in front of this old wooden door. We kind of pull back a little bit. They're standing in front of it. Looks like a cottage, like a log cabin up north kind of thing. So they're standing and they're kind of smiling. We can kind of hear faintly in the distance, kind of sounds like a dirt road. Well, then we have a reverse angle and we can see what they're looking at. We can see a car in the distance. It's slowly pulling up this winding driveway. It's like this wooded area, but we can actually hear in the car, even though the doors are closed and the windows are rolled up, we can actually hear in the car, "No," right? But as soon as the doors open up, here's Scott and Melody. They pop out either side and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" So they go up. Everyone kind of gives each other hugs and everything is all happy and stuff. But when Melanie goes and hugs Megan, Melanie goes, "Oh my God, I need a drink." And Megan says, "Margarita's in the kitchen. Come on, let's go." Scott is about to go in, but that's when Daryl says, "Well, Scott, hold on. I want to show you something out back really quick." So they kind of go out back, and there's kind of this separate garage from the rest of the log cabin. So Daryl opens it up, and there is this beautifully restored 57 Chevy. It looks awesome. And Scott says, "Oh my gosh, your uncle just left this here?" And Daryl's like, "Yeah, she's a beaut, huh?" Scott says, "Well, do you have the keys?" Daryl's like, "No, I don't have the keys, unfortunately, but yeah, man, it's beautiful, huh?" So Scott says, "Yeah, beautiful. Speaking of beautiful, I want to show you something." Reaches into his back pocket, pulls out this little box, opens it up, and there is this beautiful engagement ring. And that's when Daryl says, "Oh my gosh, you're going to propose to Melanie?" And Scott says, "Oh my gosh, shh, what, shh. You can't say anything. She has no idea. Trust me, if you could have heard the way she was talking on the way here, she has absolutely no idea that this is going to happen. Oh my gosh, when are you going to do it?" And Scott says, "I don't know, not tonight. Maybe tomorrow night I'll propose tomorrow night at some point." Daryl says, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I can't wait to tell Megan." And Scott says, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" "No, you can't tell Megan. Why did I even say anything? If you tell Megan, Megan's going to act different, and then Melanie's totally going to know something's up." So Daryl's like, "Fine, all right, I won't say anything." "Oh, why do you tell me secrets? You know I can't keep them." Scott says, "Dude, you need to pinky swear me. You are not going to say anything." And Daryl's like, "Fine, I won't say anything." So they go inside. We dissolve to a full moon. Now it's nighttime, and it's kind of creepy because there's a full moon. We dissolve to another shot of a fireplace. We kind of pull back, and here is Scott and Melanie. They're on one side. They've got drinks in hand. Daryl and Megan, they're on the other side. They're not just playing Jenga. They're playing Truth or Dare Jenga. But the camera pulls back even further. We realize we're actually not inside, we're outside, and we were looking through a window. So the camera pulls back further and further and further, and the camera's going faster and faster. The camera starts going a little bit lower, and we can see tall grasses and trees and stuff kind of passing. So we go back, we're like, I don't know, maybe like 100 yards away from the house. So the house is looming in the distance. We can kind of see the light on through the window still. We see the full moon in the distance. and the camera slows to a stop. And it's just this shot looking at the house. But then we hear it. And then you see a foot right in front of the camera, slowly walking towards the house. And as the figure gets far enough, you see that this figure is holding this giant machete, slowly walking towards the house. Now, I know what you're all thinking. You're probably sitting there going, hold on a second. You can't do this yet because Scott hasn't proposed to Melanie. But that's awesome, right? So in good storytelling, you want to make people laugh, you want to make people cry, you want to make people fall in love with your characters, and then kill them. Now, obviously, I'm being facetious. Like, it's not like I want people to die or be killed or anything. But for a good story, if it has meaning, if you want people to feel it and you want people to be terrified, and if you really want it to matter when maybe some people are going to get the axe in your horror movie, you have to have it mean something. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of bratty teenagers that are screaming and no one even cares. Like, oh, it's just a lot of blood for no reason. Make it count. Did you enjoy class today? If so, give me a like. If there's something you'd like to see me cover in a future video, let me know what that is in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I've also got a video series called Sketchbook Challenge that helps your drawing, creativity, and fill up an awesome looking sketchbook. Plus, there are videos on You Can Draw Star Wars, Hollywood is Dead, and sneak peeks at the Aladdin 3477 motion picture trilogy. In order to not miss any new videos, hit that notification bell. Sharing is caring, and it's great to inspire your friends. Share this video on social media and your friends will share awesome art tips they find with you. If you're on Instagram, you can follow me at Matt_Busch_Instagram. I'll see you back in the classroom soon. Don't be tardy.